Welcome back to Exploring with Ash and Jake. Let's talk about the Ken and Barbie killers. Where is Carla and Homolka today? Our story takes place in Canada. The year is 1987. No one, including closest friends, could have predicted they would one day be known as the worldwide Ken and Barbie killers. Paul Bernardo was an intelligent and popular 23-year-old from Scarborough area of Toronto and appeared to be on the path to success. After graduating from Sir Wilfrid Laurier Colgate Institute, he attended the University of Toronto Scarborough while working as an army consultant. Yet behind his blonde locks, deep dimples, and charming personality, Bernardo was dabbling in dark fantasies of rape and torture. He began to indulge in these sadistic urges by humiliating women and hitting them on his dates. But when his desires satiated and began prowling at night and searching for girls walking alone, he would eventually rape at least 13 women, yet his thirst for dark perversion was never quenched. Scarborough detectives began looking for someone who became known as the Scarborough Rapist, and although Paul was almost an identical match to the sketch police made from victims' accounts of the assaults, he wasn't arrested when initially questioned. He cleverly talked his way out of an interrogation, even voluntarily giving a DNA sample to the police. Meanwhile, Carla Homolka, who was a 17-year-old living in Chattanooga, as the eldest of her parents' 3 children, Carla set a good example for her younger sisters by working a part-time job at an animal hospital, volunteering, and maintaining good grades. She came from a seemingly normal background that included pool parties, dances, and other typical suburban activities. Everything in Homolka's life changed when she spotted Bernardo at a restaurant in Scarborough. The two immediately hit it off. Friends said the chemistry between Carla and Paul was so fierce that they couldn't keep their hands off each other, often making others in the room uncomfortable with their aggressive public displays of affection. It wasn't long before Bernardo began sharing his twisted fantasies with Homolka, and to his surprise, not only did she permit him to indulge in his sick obsessions, but she wholeheartedly encouraged them. As the relationship progressed, Bernardo began teasing Homolka about being used goods since he wasn't her first sexual relationship. Frantic that she would lose him to someone more innocent, she offered him something he couldn't refuse, her own little sister's virginity as a Christmas present. Bernardo readily accepted Homolka's gift. In December of 1990, the couple outlined plans to get the 14-year-old Tammy Homolka so drunk that she wouldn't realize what was happening to her. When nighttime arrived, Tammy was indeed drinking but remained coherent. Knowing that she wouldn't consent to sleeping with Bernardo, the couple slipped Valium into the young teen's drink. Eventually, Tammy wanted to lie down after complaining of dizziness, but when she failed to pass out, Bernardo and Homolka put Holthane chemical that Homolka stole from her job at the animal hospital over her mouth and nose until she passed out. Once she was unconscious, Bernardo began filming Tammy and demanded that Homolka molest her younger sister. Bernardo then began to rape Tammy himself, but after a minute or so, the teen woke up. Tammy began violently throwing up and choking as she gasped for breath. The couple called 911 in a panic. They scrambled to cover their tracks, hiding evidence, dressing Tammy, and putting the girl back in her bed. Paramedics and police arrived, but it was too late for the teenager. Tammy died after choking on her own vomit. No foul play was suspected. Bernardo seemed to take Tammy's death to heart after playing the video of her friends while crying, but at Bernardo's instance, Homolka later dressed up her sister's clothes, and then they had sex on the dead girl's bed. Reeling from the fact that he got away with murder, Bernardo's dark fantasies increased, feeling the need for more stimulation. He kidnapped a 14-year-old Leslie Moff in June of 1991, just days before he married Homolka. He forced petrified, blindfolded young girl into his home where Homolka waited. Homolka watched while Bernadette raped the teen for hours on end before she was choked to death. Though who actually did the killing remains a mystery. Bernardo insists that Homolka killed Mahaffey out of jealousy, while Homolka said Bernardo squeezed the girl's throat so tight that she eventually expired from lack of air, or asphyxiation. They eventually chopped up the girl into pieces and buried her in the cement. Mahaffey's remains were found a few weeks later in Ontario Lake Gibsons, weighed down by concrete blocks. Bernardo realized that the investigators didn't suspect him, at least on the surface, which boosted his confidence and convinced him that he was invincible to the police. His bizarre sense of bravado led to the kidnapping of a 15-year-old Christian French in April of 1992. While Bernardo brought Mahaffey into his home by his own doing, it was Homolk that lured French into Bernardo's car. Homolk asked the Catholic schoolgirl to come closer to give her directions, and then Bernardo grabbed her from behind and forced her into the vehicle. A series of rapes and beatings came next, as she had with her sister Tammy. Homolk participated in sexually assaulting the French girl before the girl was brutally killed. 12 years later, detectives found French's naked body in the ditch in North Burlington, Ontario. This time, however, an acquaintance gave Bernardo's name to detectives as a possible murder suspect. He was questioned in his home, but nothing came of it. The couple's killing spree came to an end on January 5, 1993, when Homolk, severely beaten by Bernardo, moved in with relatives after confessing the crimes to her family. They turned to the police, and when detectives interviewed Homolk, she was reluctant to open up until they offered her a plea deal that would have her out of prison within 12 years. Bernardo subsequently was arrested, but during questioning, he insisted that he never killed anyone, though he did admit to a number of sexual assaults. Interestingly enough, though, Bernardo had a long history of committing rape. He never killed any of the women he sexually assaulted in Scarborough. The first murder occurred after he took up with Hokomo when they paired up to kill her sister. Bernardo was charged and convicted of numerous counts of rape, including the Scarborough assaults, for which DNA testing had finally implicated him, and 2 accounts of murder. Homolk, on the other hand, was charged and convicted of manslaughter in exchange for testifying against Bernardo. While some people agreed that Hokomo deserved a lesser sentence, believing that she was scared for her life and had been beaten into submission by Bernardo, the overwhelming majority of the Canadians who followed the case were appalled that she got off so easy. Needless to say, when she was released from prison in 2005, the public erupted in protest. The community's outrage obviously didn't escape. Homolk, shortly after release, she hid away in Guadalupe in an island in the Caribbean with her new husband, who happens to be a former lawyer of the brothers. After spending more than a decade there and having 3 kids, she resurfaced in 2014. Holcombe's been living in Quebec area under the assumed name, but in 2016 her cover was blown when a reporter La Presse spotted her and her husband and subsequently revealed that Homolk and her new family had moved back to Chattanooga, and clearly upset that he was confronted, said that anyone who had an issue concerning his wife could simply move. If they were worried, all they had to do was move. We're free, we're in a free country. Has anything happened over the past 10 years? So why are they worried? I don't see why they are worried, Bordelis said. The problem, however, is much bigger than Homolk simply being back in Canada. She transformed herself into a doting soccer mom and began participating in activities at Central Park Elementary School, where her children are students. Regardless of how long it's been since her crimes, that didn't sit well with other parents. Although local school boards sent letters to parents assuring them that their kids were safe, Homolk's mere presence sparked an outrage that sadly will likely end up affecting her children. Montreal attorney Eteric Sutton followed up by saying there is nothing that can be done to remove Homolk from the neighborhood where she isn't wanted, as she's done her time and is legally free. Like it or not, she has a right to live her life like any other person without being subject to threats and harassment and being hounded to the point that she seeks refuge in her own home and is afraid to leave, Sutton said. Meanwhile, Bernardo is fighting for his freedom. Last year, he applied for day parole but was shut down quickly as he requested it. He is up for standard parole in 3 years, but the Correctional Service in Canada, Tim Stanchion, assured the public that even if he has the right to apply for parole, is only a standard procedure. Having been deemed a dangerous offender, Bernardo will probably never be released from prison. Is it fair to say that Homolka, who stood by Bernardo's side and participated in the heinous crimes, is free to walk the streets? Apparently so. In the eyes of the law and the attorney, the memory of her crimes will likely never fade, no matter how many times she changes her name.